Hey Laowinners, it's Laowi86 with another video. And I wanted to talk about something that I've been deeply interested in for a very long time. My interest sort of peaked in this topic when I found myself very close to this source country that we're talking about today. Now, as you guys know, there is a ton of news right now about our favorite fat friend, our favorite cheese addict, cognac swilling North Korean dictator, Kim Jong Un, the third successor in a long line of very dear, great, and amazing leaders of the Juche system, that is, Juche Communist North Korea. Now, the reason that my interest was piqued is that when Winston Serpenzade and I were filming Conquering Northern China, one of our goals was to get very close, see how close we could get to the North Korean border from the China side and simultaneously avoid like all the places where people usually go. There's a city called Dandong. It's got a port there, Port of Dandong. And that's where, if you're a foreigner or a Chinese tourist, that's where you're usually going to look into North Korea as like a tourist trap thing from the Chinese side. And people find it fascinating because you can actually go on the river and like get pretty close, and you get to see this like kind of Potemkin village across the river from China into North Korea. We wanted to avoid that, so what we did was we skirted the border pretty much the entire time and found places, you can see in the footage back here, villages that were really just on the border on the China side. And the fascinating thing is when you go into these areas, unlike Dandong, when you go into these areas, the locals here are actually Korean people. You could say North Korean people because at that time, you know, when that Korean ethnicity was there and then got annexed by China, it would have been part of modern day North Korea. Long story short, there was a period where North Korea was actually richer than communist China. So we talked to some of these people here that had family on the North Korean side, and they would send over refrigerators and money and all this stuff from North Korea into China to the Korean ethnic people. Super sweet people. These ladies are super nice. But right now in the news, everyone keeps talking about the fact that Kim Jong Un is potentially brain dead, or he has serious health problems, cardiac failure. He's going into surgery, all this kind of stuff. That's not what we're here to talk about. Whether that's true or not, it's very difficult to see. If you look at the headlines, it's pretty insane when you look at what mass media is doing with this story. But a lot of the topics kind of evolve into this idea that, okay, when his line is done, because it's just him, his sister has been pulling the strings behind him, most North Koreans will not accept a female leader. They'll accept that she's a powerful female, but a female figurehead leader as the head of North Korea, this basically, hermit state, they will not accept that. So the speculation is that either South Korea will finally do something about North Korea if there's a power vacuum with the aid of the US. And then also China has a deep vested interest in having a buffer state to keep North Korea. They use North Korea basically as not only a black market trading place, but also a buffer state against the US and South Korea to make sure that the US doesn't have troops like on a Chinese border, right? So for them, it's been a thorn in their side. It's pretty much China's only real ally is North Korea. They've had to sanction North Korea as well, just under international pressure. But the interesting thing is when Winston and I went there, we saw how porous this border actually is. I mean, you have people every single day crossing the river, the Tumen River, going into China and then back into North Korea, smuggling USB drives, toys, clothes, all this kind of stuff, even food, alcohol, cigarettes. And that's why you can see, if you go into North Korea, a lot of Chinese fashion, a lot of Chinese products, DVD players, all this kind of stuff that normally they wouldn't be allowed to have in North Korea. Now, when I mentioned the power vacuum, I was doing some research, and I actually found, and this is fascinating, I actually found this Douyin account, which is like Chinese TikTok. And it's this Chinese dude that like lives and works in North Korea. He set up factories and does all this kind of stuff. And I'm actually going to be running some of these clips behind me as I talk. I thought it was fascinating because it's like modern day, right now in North Korea footage, stuff that you usually can't find. You go sign up for your Pyongyang tour where you get guided around to go look at statues and get scolded if you don't take proper pictures of the great leaders and stuff. This is real, like, on-the-ground footage. Granted, it is in Kaesong and Pyongyang, which are two very wealthy cities by North Korean standards. But you'll be seeing some of that run in the background, which is fascinating. Now, the fact that potentially Kim Jong Un might have some health problems. Let's run a hypothetical scenario. I'm going to make some predictions. I don't think that South Korea or the US will end up having a major foothold in North Korea if there is a power vacuum. And the reason I say this is that what if I already told you that China basically is controlling the economy and wealth of North Korea right now? If you go back like 10 years and you look at North Korea, it was absolutely, unbelievably, an unbridled hermit state where people just weren't allowed to do anything. There's always been a black market there where people can trade stuff kind of under the surface. But right now in North Korea, because of the youngest Kim Jong Un, because of his like lack of leadership and his really, I can say, limited ability to control every single area of the country, the black market has become the proper like real market. So capitalism is not allowed in North Korea legally. You're not allowed to exchange things for money unless it is state sanctioned. But right now, what you're seeing is within North Korea, actual daily life going on where people are starting businesses, they're trading goods, they're buying cars, they're getting driver's licenses, they're purchasing apartments, they're getting electronics. We're talking about in a country that like has the electricity shut off every single day. A lot of people don't have access to the basic needs and stuff, but in certain areas, there is a thriving economy. And Winston, can you skip forward so it's just the TikTok footage?
Sure, of course. Let's get it over there.
Sorry. Well, okay. Yeah, go back. Okay. So in the background, you can see there's actual life going on. So like I said, if you went back 10 years, you would be seeing in North Korea where there's pretty much no one out. A lot of starvation, and there is still a lot of starvation. When we were on the border up there, we saw people did not have enough food. I mean, they were emaciated. Their ribs were poking out. These guys would make these log transports that would go down the river, and these guys were starving for sure. But there's this unofficial economy that is making certain North Korean people rich. And it's crazy because you would never see grainy cell phone footage by a North Korean defector that smuggled it out and then sold it to the BBC. That's pretty much all you got back in the day. And now you got this Chinese guy just walking around with a camera, or a cell phone camera. He's just filming and uploading stuff. Could be a propaganda effort for sure, but there's a much richer economy right now because his status quo is kind of like, you know what? I'm going to do horrible atrocities. I'm going to get rid of my competition. I'm going to poison my brother. I'm going to be a corrupt dictator, just like my family's legacy. But I'm also going to kind of let people do whatever they want financially, because if I don't, there's going to be another great famine. Keep in mind, his father, Kim Jong-il, starved millions of its own citizens in the 1990s, while they took some of the aid and like sold it for profit for the government. The government's been running illicit meth trade all around the world. They've been exporting soldiers to do dirty militia work or militant work, basically, for other corrupt dictatorships like Zimbabwe. But you can see here, there's appliances for sale. This is unheard of. And this is what's been shocking me, is that this status quo, like, let's just let people run with personal wealth and let them do what they want, has transformed the country into a semi-functioning dystopian hermit state, which is crazy to me. It's crazy to see this daily life stuff, cars on the road. And yes, like I said, if you go to northern provinces like Hamgyong province, those places are in dire straits. They're horrible. They're really, really messed up. At the same time, people are still trading goods now. And I find that absolutely fascinating that this guy is actually uploading this stuff. I'll post a link later of this dude's, I think he's got a TikTok channel as well. But gone are the days of you not being able to, as a North Korean citizen, not being able to sell your goods, your produce, not being able to buy a DVD player or a TV or a washing machine. It's crazy to me. So if I tie this all back, hypothetically, if Kim Jong Un loses power because he is too ill or he dies, I'm telling you right now that the fact that all of this trade is happening, this unofficial trade is happening, is because of China. It's because we have hundreds or thousands of people every single day smuggling goods from China into North Korea. And China has already set up, Chinese citizens have already successfully set up restaurants, factories, and built most of the infrastructure with North Korean partners. But the real power is in the cash, and the cash is coming from China. So it's kind of like this. South Korea has had some like joint partnerships that usually fall through that have contributed mostly to North Korea's previous economy, but North Korea's economy right now is based on China. It's 100% based on China. They do not trade other than things like tea or some mushrooms and stuff like that legally with other countries. So you have China. You can even see China's influence in the infrastructure right now, in the roads, in the buildings, in the fashion. Maybe not hers. She kind of looks like an ex-Soviet soldier. But you're seeing that. My prediction in the beginning is that China's already got a foothold in the North Korean economy. So if there is a power vacuum, it's not the speculation that South Korean troops and American troops are going to rush into North Korea to claim the land. It's not like that. What's going to happen is China is going to come in, but not with troops, not with military. There's not going to be a military struggle here. There's going to be pockets lined within the North Korean leadership and holes to be filled. And those holes will open the economy even more into China's hands. So you'll see more and more people investing in North Korea because it's kind of an untouched market, untapped market. You'll see even looser regulations on economic principles. But you also see a very strategic ground for mainland China. They have a huge forced labor camp, very well-oiled forced labor camp machine already running there. The populace that is very used to top-down leadership, much more so than mainland China. You would have a pretty receptive populace that just saw their parents starving in the last decade or previous 2 decades, now able to have a better life just by doing what they know how to do. Their basic skills will earn them hard currency, something that they've never had in the past. So you're going to see I don't want to say slow, it would probably be pretty quick, takeover of North Korea by the CCP, by China, and also just by laissez-faire economics that China will allow and North Korea will allow in this type of power vacuum. So instead of being a thorn in China's side, in the Communist Party of China's side, North Korea will become a vassal state that will also have the disadvantage of having the US on its border, but the border is not on its mainland Chinese side border now. Now it'll be on the DMZ, which has always been heavily fortified. It's miles wide, and it's a much less threatening border than potentially having like US troops and intelligence with South Korea's help on the mainland Chinese border. So it's a dream come true for China to see a somewhat instability in North Korea, but they don't want to see a complete collapse. So as long as this kind of band-aid that Kim Jong Un is allowed to happen, this kind of free market capitalism that he's allowed to slip through his fingers, that is going to make the transition into a Chinese state much, much easier, much easier. Pair that with the fact that you have millions of ethnic North Korean people in China just on the other side of the border that would potentially be able to reunify with their families, long-lost relatives. You would have these kind of cultural ties that go even deeper than their Chinese ties. When we met these North Korean people that were born in China or grew up in China on the Chinese side, their first language is still Korean. They speak the North Korean dialect of Korean. Their identity is not so much Chinese. If you talk to them and you just get to know them like right at face value, they'll say they're Chinese first, but the more you get to talk to them, they can speak fluent Chinese, but their identity is completely Korean. If you go to some of these smaller cities like Yenji on the North Korean border on the Chinese side, everyone is Korean ethnically. Everyone's speaking Korean. And even the buildings look like something you'd see even in South Korea. It didn't emulate the Chinese style, right? So all of a sudden you have this pretty easy transition of a local populace, millions of people on this border that would be able to thrive and work and communicate with the people within North Korea as well. Like I said, there's already been tons of unofficial economic ties between the two countries because hundreds or thousands of people cross the river every day to exchange goods. So this is kind of like a win-win situation for China. And that's why I don't think that I've seen so much bullshit like theories about how China is going to storm in there. If it's confirmed that Kim Jong Un is dead and that there's a huge power vacuum, they're going to storm in there with the PLA troops and they're going to take over everything and ransack everything. No, absolutely not. That's not how China works. Look at what China does with man-made islands in the South China Sea. Look what they do. They will scramble jets and put in their navy and harass Taiwan and stuff like that, just as a exercise to bolster national support at home. But you never see them go and storm and try to take territory. You see things like the Bait and Rob initiative, the Belt and Road initiative in other countries. It's a slow game. It's investment. You do not see China going there militarily, like really harassing people at face value. They will report that that's what they're doing to the people at home, just so that they can feel as a Chinese nation that they're powerful internationally. But what you don't see is them storming in like you would old school style, where you take over a country. So that's my prediction, is that's absolutely not going to happen. The seeds are already in place in North Korea for a Chinese takeover economically, and that, I think, the rest will fill in, like the gaps will fill in. It's not like a country that has had, you look at South Korea and North Korea, they're technically still at civil war, but they're not countries like, I've tried to come up with an example, maybe like let's say a war-torn African country that has had instability for so long that it's become the norm. So where like, okay, a new government took over, okay, there's civil war on the streets, okay, bombs are going off. It's like, or somewhere in the Middle East, right? It's not like somewhere like Syria. North Korea, albeit poor and very dysfunctional and incredibly corrupt and cut off from the rest of the world, is still a functioning society. It's still a functioning people group that make it through life and survive. And when you remove that whole powerful one-party element, it can easily be replaced with its neighbors. And it wouldn't be that unfamiliar to them. I think it would be exciting to most North Korean people to have more opportunity than they even do now. So you're seeing more and more, you've seen like China go in there basically and set up these huge, massive winter sports complexes with cabins and stuff, of course, with North Korean partnership. You have all these kind of huge projects and building investments and restaurants, like I said, this unofficial economy that they've really just taken advantage of, which they're not supposed to under economic sanctions. But it's kind of unofficial in a way. So again, the gears are in motion for this to be a thing. The gears are in motion for this to become a successful endeavor for China. It won't be without international pushback for sure. I don't think it has any sort of the spices or flavorings of a wartime scenario. I think it will be subtle, fairly quick, and you're going to see, if, like I said, hypothetically, if Kim is out of power and there is a power vacuum, you will see North Korea become a Chinese state for sure. And I actually think I can put my name behind that one. So my advice is, don't read in this bullshit theory that like America is going to storm in with its troops with South Korea and like take over their long lost land. No. Don't buy into the bullshit that the PLA is just going to send 1 million troops up there and rush in and take North Korea and plant down a Chinese flag. No. It's a vassal state. It will be a vassal state for a long time until full integration has been realized. And that is my prediction on the state of North Korea in a power vacuum situation, which we may or may not see. Who knows? But even if it doesn't happen, even if Kim is alive and healthy and the surgery goes well, the gears are, like I said, are already in motion. They're already happening. All of that economic tie, all of those economic ties and gains are already paired and coupled with mainland China. So it's just a matter of time either way. You're not going to see North Korea threaten China. Everybody is in China's pockets, and everybody in China is in North Korea's pockets at that point that is doing business on the ground in North Korea. Let's get to some super chats. I have Dion Chapman, my man. It's a Chinese plot to take over the world, one country at a time. Kidding. Just wanted to give you some money. I appreciate it. Winston has his fingers in the background there.
Just saying hi.
Hi. Brian. Oh, by the way, yeah, Winston and I have some absolutely amazing, this is not even Chinese Koreans, real North Koreans footage that someday we hope to share with you guys.
Someday. We couldn't show it because it would have put their lives in danger. But who knows, if things change drastically in North Korea, we may actually be able to release.
We danced footage and spoke to real North Koreans.
And they gave us flowers.
And it wasn't a stunt. It was good.
It was really good.
We had fun. Okay, next is Brian. Thank you very much. Roy, thanks again. Thank you, Roy. Lorraine, none of your business. Thank you. Good job. Just another Patty. Wow, thank you very much. Hoosier here to picking up the happy hour tab. Thank you. Keep doing what you do, both of you.
Thank you.
More important context, perspective, and history. Thank you. It's my pleasure. R. Hopper, C. Milk and Winston, truth to power. Thank you. Thank you. And that is true. The truth is powerful. Angela Naranjo, thanks for all you do, keeping us informed in this region. You're very welcome. I'm sorry for the departure and talking about North Korea today, but it's very much related to current affairs within China. David Ward, keep up the awesome work. Thank you, David. Random 1208. Do you see potential for internal nonviolent resistance against the Kim regime? I do not. And the reason I say that is because although there is eyewitness accounts of North Korean people that are very much opposed to the Kim regime, it's exactly what China did. You had a populace in China that was so tired of authoritarianism that they went into Tiananmen Square to literally try to overthrow the government or protest against the government, and were met with a violent crackdown. But at the same time, it boiled up to a point where they were like, you know what, this is bullshit. The rest of the world's, moving on. They saw the writing on the wall for the Soviet Union collapsing. They're like, why can't we have this too? North Korea has been oppressed for so long from day one that there is enough economic freedom right now to make them kind of just be okay. And I'm not speaking for everyone, but there's not enough dissent on the ground because there's too much economic freedom and people are actually not starving anymore. So in 1989 at Tiananmen Square, you didn't have a Chinese populace for the most part that was starving. You had an educated populace that wanted change, political change, and democracy and freedom of speech. In North Korea, starvation is too recent and still occurring to where the predominant advantage that they want to have in life is to have a little bit of money so they can actually have a life. So for them, political change is much less important because it's not even a concept in a lot of people's heads. They've never been offered outside information. And they'd rather have their families not starving and they don't have to ration rice every single day. Angie at work, thank you. Sorry. White Death 9. I've noticed many anti-CCP people who suddenly agree with the CCP narrative when it comes to the Uyghurs. Will you guys try to avoid associating with these individuals when getting your message out? That's interesting. I'm trying to think.
Who are they talking about?
So, anti-CCP people, there are people out there, anti-CCP people that will tend to agree with the CCP when it comes to the Uyghurs, and I think it's because they have a sour taste in their mouth about Muslims and Islam, right? We don't. We believe in freedom of religion for everyone. So, and we also know that Uyghurs, I can't personally attest to knowing anyone in a very militant Islamic region, but we know Xinjiang is not one of those regions. Xinjiang people, we sit down and we have beers with them. They're chill people. They're really nice. And actually, a lot of times, much easier to talk to because their culture is more in line with a Western sensibility. You know what I mean?
Also, the best food in China, let's be honest, is the Xinjiang food.
It is. Absolutely is.
Well, for foreigners, because they got a lot of bread, they got really hearty noodles, beef, and the food that
palatable.
They make. It's great. It's shish kebabs.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Turkish food.
Yeah, and the individual nature of Uyghurs is opposed to Han people, and it's more aligned with us. They're adventurous.
Stereotypes, some of them are true. You do get a lot of thieves from Xinjiang come into the big cities.
But you can also attribute that to the fact that they have a really shit life in their province.
Absolutely. Those guys selling those stupid nutcakes that try to rip you off.
Sure.
Yeah, they're a couple of scoundrels, but at the same time, Xinjiang people are pretty.
And they're also trying to live in a country that they don't consider their own.
Exactly. And we actually met. Remember, we met a Uyghur in San Francisco.
Yeah, we did.
Or a guy from Xinjiang.
He was Uyghur.
He was awesome.
Yeah.
And we went to that Xinjiang restaurant.
Yes.
The Uyghur restaurant in the Bay Area.
That was amazing.
Bloody fantastic. That
So
was
good.
probably some of the best food ever.
Seriously.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of stereotypes, and unfortunately, the majority of Chinese people think badly about the Uyghurs. They do. You speak to anyone, and they'll immediately say, they're all thieves, and they're all
That's why they support
bad.
the oppression.
Yeah. So, for them, they just see them as thieves and terrorists and just dismiss them as people.
Right. Correct. Thank you.
Anyway, yeah.
A host. Thank you very much. Lee, who is going to be the new puppet if Kim Jong Un dies? I'm not sure. It'll probably be a military leader of sorts, but again, with heavy CCP control, I'm sure. Jan Faustka, thank you. Hi guys, amazing analysis as always. Would it be that bad if China annexes North Korea when Kim dies? Do you know Czech trams are in North Korea? Look up trams in Pyongyang. Also, how you both doing? Stay safe and stay awesome. Thank you, Jan. That's why I didn't really throw out a severe opinion about that, because China annexing North Korea would by and large, probably be better in the immediate short term for North Korean people just because of the opportunities that will arise. It also could be a more gradual transition into, becoming a part of the rest of the world. I would be much more in line to say, I would be much more okay with that annexation if you were talking to me in like 2008. The problem is that the CCP with its surveillance state has gone so far down the rabbit hole to where I can't even justify almost anything that the Chinese government does at this point. Not because I have a chip on my shoulder, just because it's gotten that bad. Not only for foreigners in China, but for Chinese people as well. So now I'd be more apt to see North Korea kind of have this laissez-faire relationship with the rest of the world and fill in the gaps themselves. But that's a pipe dream. So yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, it would be good for a lot of people in the short term, yes. In the long term, I don't think it would be good for global stability to have a CCP-controlled North Korea with all of its, horrendous human rights records and the entire entire system based around human rights atrocities and basic slavery. To have that flourish under the CCP would not be a good thing. So yeah, the moral part of me says no. I think it's bad, probably. But looking out for basic people that have had such horrible lives, yeah, it'd probably be a good thing. And I'll look into the trams. Thank you. Bakul Dada, appropriate punishment for CCP virus. I mean, the punishment is very simple. It's don't trade with mainland China, especially with companies that are state-owned. To decouple from China doesn't have to be a military threat. It doesn't have to be something that completely destroys the world economy. It will be terrible in the beginning. There will be recessions globally. But to slowly move away that supply chain and put it into different countries, which we're already seeing, is punishment enough. I mean, if China is going to go in masquerade as this international power, but through its actions show the rest of the world that it's actually just a closed-off state, becoming a hermit state, basically like North Korea in many ways. If it's going to close off its populace so that they can't even talk to other nations or people from other nations, but allow them to go, invest and bring money back home to the CCP, completely in a one-sided situation where IP theft is just rampant and not punished, and they're, completely corrupting international organizations. If you're looking at it from that perspective, you have to just decouple. You have to stop relying on China for everything, and you have to treat them based on their actions, not on their projected image. Don't treat them like an international power because they're not acting like one. You have to act like a responsible international power and be reprimanded when you break those rules. You can't be one of the least free countries in the world that is horrific to its own citizens and then expect people to want to do business with you. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast, is what people do. But the punishment is to stop doing business with China. I mean, there's plenty more countries like Taiwan and Vietnam and places that, Vietnam doesn't have a great track record, but much better than China does. Matthew Stein, thank you for becoming a member. I appreciate it. Chris Partlow, Kim Jong Un only has a daughter. This could make her the first female North Korean dictator. True. Again, what I'm seeing amongst South Korean people on the internet and Chinese people as well is that North Korean people wouldn't tolerate, maybe nominally, but wouldn't tolerate a female leader. Coco for Kosh, Tim Pool is coming to California to be on Joe Rogan. Do you think there's a chance that you can interview him? I've actually been talking to his manager, and we should be appearing on his show at some point. Great insights, good info. Here are a few bucks to keep you going. Stay safe. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. My major is in North Korean studies. More North Korea videos, please. Awesome. I've always enjoyed the topic. The change, you don't see people talking about the change. You see people talking about the past oppression, current oppression as well. But it's very exciting what's happening on the ground there right now. I love reading about it. This one's in Chinese. 你好, I'm just going to translate. Hello, I'm really happy, or sorry, not happy. I'm really tired of hearing people say that the virus actually started in the US. I want to tell them immediately, but I'm scared that my WeChat account will be erased. How do you think I should deal with this? And I want to be a digital nomad. What country do you recommend? China now looks terrible if you're American. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I would just avoid, if you're on WeChat, first off, just avoid that topic completely. Use a different medium to tell people that kind of stuff if you care enough about your WeChat account, because a lot of WeChat accounts have been shut down for even talking about this, especially if you try to go against the current narrative within China. As for being a digital nomad, I see a lot of people doing it in Thailand. It's cheap. Housing is very cheap to get. Internet is okay. It's not blocked. Food is cheap. I think Thailand is probably a good bet. I personally would choose Taiwan just because I speak Chinese, as do you as well. I would choose Taiwan because it's also quite cheap. Not as cheap as Thailand, but I would function more in society there because I've lived in China for 10 years. But yeah, I'd say those two options were quite good. Jan, also so happy to be a patron of both of you. Thank you, Jan. And I almost put my foot in my mouth last time because I was going to say, guys, guess what? I'm monetized. And Winston and I were celebrating because a lot of our videos seemed to be monetized. But what happens is they'll be monetized for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then they'll go yellow, which means demon. So basically we're in a situation now where we get excited. We're finally starting to make a little money on our videos. YouTube relaxed their regulations talking about COVID-19 and stuff like that, coronavirus, CCP virus. But then at the end of the day, the videos go down. So,
yeah, I mean, I've had a situation where, okay, the majority of my videos have been demonetized. Then I got 2 recently that were monetized. One got like monetized and it seemed fine, and it even got like manually reviewed as monetized. And then I guess it's being flagged by the nationalists and stuff, and it got demonetized and confirmed demonetized. So that, in 3 months now, I've had 2 videos in 3 months that have been monetized, and then one of them got demonetized.
Correct. So, we're in the same boat.
Yep.
And Endgame, what I was talking about actually was thank you for the patrons out there that support us.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Speaking of endgames, the English loyalist says, what is China's endgame? Global domination. Now, I think China's endgame is to retain CCP leadership, have absolute and entire control over not only its own country, but it's all of its claimed territories. And then also to make the rest of the world tolerant of what it does, so it's able to exploit resources and continue its system that it currently runs with more oppression in the future. Kingdoms of Erden. Any possibility that North Korea would reunite with South Korea willingly for even more freedom and future potential? There is going to be too many powers. That's where you would see something crazy. Like, there's been too much misinformation and brainwashing from North Korea saying that South Korea is horrible and it's terrible and it's actually poor and people are morally corrupted and people are sleeping in tents. They have learned that for so long that I think the idea of cozying up to China, especially in the region where there's all these ethnic Koreans, is more tantalizing to them, I would say. That's a more natural integration than with South Korea that is a full-blown democracy. And again, there's going to be too much international pressure at that point from China, I think, that would threaten to sanction North Korea into the absolute ground. And they already have partnerships and a lot of money flowing between the two countries, so it would sting a little bit. I also don't think that South Korea wants an immediate reunification. If you're talking about East Germany versus West Germany, that was already such a nightmare when they smashed the wall and the two countries came together as one unified Germany. The discrepancy between wealth and discrepancy between education and infrastructure and stuff was already bad enough in East and West Germany. That discrepancy was already a nightmare to try to overcome, to the point now where East Germany is still wildly poorer than West Germany. That integration was hard enough. If you look at North Korea trying to integrate with South Korea, you're talking about like 50 times more difficult, because you have a country that the average person makes like $1,000 or $2,000 a year versus, with adjusted PPP, talking about South Korea, which is probably around like $45,000, $50,000 a year. So that level of discrepancy would make it incredibly hard to get North Koreans in the workforce to be able to live cohesively with South Korea. G13RS, hi, C-Milk, what about Otto Warmbier, arrest and death? What about it? It's a tragedy. You had this kid that didn't really know what was going on. His tour group didn't alert him properly of what he should and shouldn't do. Stole a banner, was arrested, sentenced to death, and then shipped back to America in a permanent coma and died.
Not sentenced to death, sentenced to hard labor.
Sentenced to hard labor, I apologize. Basically the same thing, to be honest.
Do you want another actual story?
Sure.
So, I know a guy who's got the inside scoop on what happened to him, and apparently, and again, this is not 100% proven, but this is what I was told. He was sentenced to, I think, 15 years hard labor, and then he immediately tried to commit suicide by hanging himself. And so the guards found him comatose already, and they managed to basically put him on life support, and then they were too embarrassed to let the world know that the guy had actually tried to commit suicide under their watch. So they just kept him alive and kept stalling, and eventually they just sent his vegetable body back, still on life support, and that's why he died. But that's what I heard from someone who apparently knows the leadership.
We can't confirm.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yes.
And that makes a lot of sense to me.
It does.
Because it's all about face saving.
Sure.
Imagine if the news came out that they just sentenced him to 15 years hard labor and then he committed suicide under their watch.
Yeah, because then they're going to be like, oh, look at how bad it is.
They're responsible for murdering him, basically.
Right. Good. Thank you for that.
Something about Epstein and not killing himself.
Yeah. Nice little tie. Gen C, surprise, no one from Fox News, CNN, BBC, or mainstream media interviewed yet about China. You have more insight than anyone from mainstream media. Thank you very much. They like to make a very nice distinction between us lowly YouTubers that tend to actually uncover real stories. Not to say there aren't amazing journalists out there are, but yeah, they don't like the fact that mainstream media is slowly succumbing to social media. Yes, Filipino white boy. Tim Pool believes that there's a real threat of war with China in the South China Seas. What do you guys think? I don't think so. That is one of many issues I think I will differ and disagree with Tim Pool about. There are a lot of people that like to get excited about this kind of stuff. I think there's not enough drama in their life. China's threats, and this is the problem, is you see these experts that talk about news and stuff. China's threats have always been a paper tiger. That's what you have to understand. Investment's not a paper tiger. You know, dastardly deeds in what they do internationally to retain power and get resources, that's not a paper tiger. But this military stuff, you've seen every single year military threats from China. It's supposedly a peaceful, loving nation. It's always for face. And prove me wrong. Don't prove me wrong, please. Tanui Tahitian Faya 987. I always thought North Korea was a smaller, meaner China. A.K.A. mini-me to Dr. Evil. Agree? Yeah, in a way. Would you say North Korea is a carbon copy of what used to be Maoist China, excluding the dynasty system? In many ways, yes. I would say it emulates a rich mix of Maoist China and the Soviet Union, in that the Asian culture is very similar to Chinese culture. Korean culture is more similar to Chinese culture, whereas Soviet culture, North Korea and China both borrowed architecture and oppression techniques, but not so much like a Russian or Eastern European culture. Chris Sexton, yes, thank you. Doxty, just hope things will be better for North Korean people. And that's the tough position you have to be in. If you don't want to make it a political international issue, and you just want North Korean people to be, better off, I totally agree with that. And that's something we noticed when we met North Korean people in China, was that sometimes having a better life is better than, being forced into forced labor and sold into prostitution and starved to death. Zachary, if Kim dies, the best possible situation is reunification like West Germany and GDR. P.S. What do you think? Yeah, and I agree. That would be the best situation, but I don't think both sides could deal with it potentially right now. And I don't even think South Korea politically wants that to happen. I think they want it to happen very, very slowly. What do you know about ABC girls, American-born Chinese? I don't know about girls, but some of my closest friends here in the U.S. are ABCs because we can actually talk about China and America. A lot in common there. Philip Hardwick, what about South Korea? Power vacuum, reunification. I think I just answered that. Thank you. Random 1208. Won't South Koreans be outraged if China takes over North Korea? Absolutely, 100%. But I don't see South Korea going to war over such a thing. I mean, they're already at war. I do not see South Korea going to war over that. Tiale Brahm. Wow, thank you very much. Very generous. Hey guys, great work exposing and opening up conversations about these human rights violating scumbags of the CCP. Anyway, thanks for sharing all the info and insight about this. Keep being awesome. Can't wait for more worthless whips, by the way. Cheers. Thank you very much. That's very nice. Today. Yeah, there's a new worthless whips up today. Maybe that's what they're referring to. Christina Youngran. Maybe the COVID tax from the U.S. to China can be forgiveness of our debt that they own. That's definitely a speculative thing that people are talking about. Jan, one more question. What about Russia stepping in? That's interesting. I mean, Russia does actually import North Korean labor in their forestry sector. So basically, it's crazy. You'll have pieces of Russia that are in the middle of Siberia can be kind of close to North Korean border, but they'll make it look like North Korea. They put up all the propaganda, all the camps are there. It resembles North Korea, but it's actually in Russia, and they bust these people with either blindfolds or the what's it called? They close the curtains on the trains or buses, and they get these North Korean laborers to go into Russia and basically work for free to cut down trees and stuff. Now, would Russia militarily step into North Korea? I think the cultures are too far apart for some meaningful integration on that level. I think China is a much more realistic country for doing something like that. Big Tech, sup dude, sup? Thank you. Ryan Jones, you two are great, and an interview with Tim Pool would be awesome. Keep up the great work and analysis. Thank you, Ryan. Santi, thank you. Bryce Byerly, if China does end up in charge in North Korea behind the scenes and opens it up even more slightly, do you think this will create a North Korea version of the Lost Generation? I mean, I think that's inevitable, isn't it? You would have an entire populace that grew up with absolute, unbelievable authoritarian dictatorship and oppression, and then marginally more freedom, at least economically. You would see the same type of thing happen for sure. I mean, when your populace has been well educated but only in the politics of North Korea and has no idea what's going on in the outside world, again, that's kind of a parallel to China too. But what's going on in the outside world, then that's what's going to happen. Sorry. Jeremiah Johnson, thank you. Appreciate all the hard work. C-Milk, use this for a few silver bullets.
Yes.
Or some Colorado Kool-Aid. I don't know what that is. I hope you guys stay safe. Which generation of 911 is your favorite? Winston's least hated. So Porsche 911, my favorite is the 993, which is the last air-cooled model. Absolutely hands down. Or the previous generation, like a 1986, 1987 Porsche 911 Turbo with a whale tail. What's your least hated?
My least hated one?
Yeah, he wants to know what's your least hated 911.
Porsche 928, which is not a 911.
That doesn't count.
Okay, out of 911s, quite honestly, I don't like them. They're just a stretched out Beetle to me. But if I had to choose, it would be an 80s one that says turbo down the side and has that big wing.
I guess we're pretty much in the same boat then.
Okay.
Thank you. Ryan, over the decades, do you think India will become an economic powerhouse for the world over China? I think it will be a key cog in the whole future system of the world economy and supply chains for sure. I don't think it can replace China's scope and absolute dominance in this sector. Noah Andrews, what is the likelihood of U.S. and South Korea becomes involved in the control of North Korea when Kim dies and putting the country on the path to democracy? Again, I think that North Korea will retain enough stability to allow China to become the next controller. Of course, there's going to be campaigns, and there always have, for South Korea and the U.S. to have some sort of soft power, whether it's dropping pamphlets over or smuggling information into North Korea about the truth of their situation. There's always going to be that, but I do think China has a much bigger foothold in real-world economics in North Korea right now, which will lead to political hold as well. Kevin Lee, thank you. Laowinner Servants Today, great job on reporting. Thank you. Old Gringo, this is old info, but when I was in the Navy, we were terrified of the Soviet Union until we saw their ships and found out that the USSR was mostly faking it. And that is a great topic idea that I will definitely cover. I do want to cover the Chinese military. I've been watching for years now a lot of military analysts that go through drills about certain countries. If they were to have conflicts, what would be the outcome? And it's pretty easy metric to base on, like based on army sizes and Navy fleet size, their aircrafts that they're using. But a lot of people don't take into account the actual nature of how the PLA works and Chinese soldiers work in China. So that's something I'll definitely talk about in the future. China's military power is greatly overblown. William Swenson, even though Dr. Milk doesn't do house calls for Firebirds, here's a counterbalance for the demonetized videos. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And there's one left. Sorry, I'm just going to find it. Biopoesis. I had the pleasure of meeting Kim Jong Un at a charity once. He is surprisingly down to earth and very funny. Love your work, guys, from Scotland. Interesting. If that's true, we also know people that have met him as well. Pauline Medina, thank you very much. And that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you next week. And next week won't be a live stream, but I'll definitely be talking about something very interesting. Check this guy out on Friday, Serpent ZA.
Got something important for you guys.
Okay, good. And next week we'll have the podcast running.
Absolutely.
And go check out ADV China. We posted on Monday. We post every Monday if you guys didn't see that there as well.
You want to tell them about your re-edit?
Oh, dude. No, we'll talk about that in the podcast.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
Okay. Thank you for everyone that supported me on Patreon and on Super Chats. It's fantastic. You're helping me through a really hard time. I want to say thank you so much, Laowinners, and I'll catch you on the next one.